Now there were Jews staying in Jerusalem. And key word, they were devout people from every nation under heaven. Why are they there? Remember, this is a national holiday. So everybody makes this trek for this national holiday. When this sound occurred, what was the sound? Not the sound of them speaking in tongues, which you're going to get to that. That violent wind sound. I mean, think of it was an explosion, okay? That's what had happened. It sounded like a bomb went off in the middle of the city. So that caught everybody's attention. When the sound occurred, a crowd came together, like any one of us, right? I mean, there's some of us who are like, oh, I'm super curious. I'm interested. A crowd came together, and they were confused because each one heard them speaking, them being those, the 120, them speaking in his own language. They were astounded and amazed, saying, look, aren't all these who are speaking Galileans? I'm going to tell you what that means because that was actually an insult. It was kind of a confusing phrase there. How is it that each of us can hear them in our own native language? Parthians, Medes, Elamites, those who live in Mesopotamia and Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, Egypt, and the parts of Libya near Cyrene. I had to practice all that to make sure I said it correct. Okay. Visitors from Rome, both Jews and converts, Cretans and Arabs, we hear them, the disciples, these people, declaring the magnificent acts of God in what? In our own language, in our own tongues. They were all astounded and perplexed, saying to one another, what does this mean? But some sneered and said, yo, they're drunk on new wine. Yo, they lit already. What is this? They're drunk on new wine. Now, like again, please tell me I'm not the only one who, in a very awkward moment, said something, made it even more awkward. All right? You done one of those? Right? You just did. Like, you didn't know what else to say, and then something came out, and you're like, you just made it worse. You know, I did that one time. Remember, we were at Disney, and we were leaving, and this lady up in the parking lot of, I feel so bad, the parking lot of Hollywood Studios, we're leaving. I got my family there, and so this lady's on her phone. She's walking and texting. This old lady, by the way, sorry for the terminology, but let's just give you an image. She doesn't see the parking, cement block. So she trips on it. And it's one of those slow falls, like, pop, 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 pop. She's trying not to fall, but it's inevitable, right? It's inevitable. You see it happening. And she just splats in the middle of the parking lot, and phone goes everywhere. And then we all run up to her, and Alicia's there. Michael was with us. And hey, you're okay? You okay? Yeah, you're okay. And I open up my big mouth, and I'm like, well, your phone's okay. And it was, I don't know, it was like this thing that came out, and they all looked at me like, why? They still make fun of me till this day. Now you can all make fun of me till this day. You're welcome. So anyways, that statement was just this awkward statement. Some people, again, imagine a bomb going off. A bomb goes off, and you're looking around, and you don't see anything on fire. You don't see damage. All you see is something really weird. A bunch of people are talking, and you saw that these people from all around the known world at the time. So there's people there just shouting out things that I hear that guy's talking my language, but there's a bunch of these people. I don't know what they're doing. I think they're drunk. And it's this phrase that new wine is I've heard it both ways. I've seen, new wine is something that's like stronger drink. So think of 100% alcohol, one of those like very concentrated stuff. But it was actually an insult. New wine is juice. It's really more like grape juice that hasn't fermented yet. And so, in essence, they're making fun of these people because they look kind of nuts or they don't understand. So they're saying, yo, these guys are lightweights. Look, oh my God, bro, they're drunk in the morning. Oh, they can't handle their mimosas. It's something like that. Like, it's something that is just so, but again, they're just saying something awkward. They don't know what they're saying because they don't know what they're seeing, and it's very confusing. And so let's just kind of break this down a little bit. The first thing that was confusing them was the fact that, notice that I said Galileans. Galileans. If you've ever read the Bible, you read the New Testament, you know that phrase sounds familiar. Jesus was from this region, and all of his disciples were considered Galileans. So think, just an area of town, all right? It was this region called Galilee. And Galileans were believed they had this cultural stigma of being a backwater town, very uneducated people, and they had a thick accent. So the second they open up their mouth, you already knew, oh, you from Galilee, number one, and there's this preconceived notion, you're also an idiot, okay? So you got to process that. Now, I will not embarrass myself and commit character suicide by trying to mimic any accents that you, let's be real, associate with people who are dumb, okay? But you know that, right? If somebody started talking in a language, some of you, from Colombia, I'm pretty sure you would hear somebody like, "Ooh, I know you're from that town," right? You're from that town in Colombia. You're from Puerto Rico. You're from that side of the island, right? You know that. Here in America, the same thing. Like depending on, there's white people that have an accent that are considered culturally to be, black people, Hispanics, everybody. Let's just be real, okay? Everybody has this accent that if you heard it, oh, you from X and Y city region. And I already have a preconceived notion of who you are because of okay? So they're confused because here's a bunch of those kind of people, Galileans, and these are not linguists. They are not linguists. And they're using and talking not only in a foreign language, but imagine this, they are talking also in the accents and dialects of these regions. And so they're super confused. This is awkward. And everyone is doing, and say, we hear all of the languages they're represented. And so that was a very interesting thing. We'll talk about a little bit more about that. That'll be a theme that kind of pops out through Acts. So we're going to pick up speaking in tongues throughout this year, so you'll see. But right now what we see is that speaking in tongues is not gibberish. It's not this made-up language. It's not this ecstatic speaking. It's not a private language that anyone, no, they are speaking in a language that is human. That's like me busting out some Korean right now. I'm not making it up. It would be, I don't know Korean, but it's just the thing. And they're speaking in languages they don't understand for a reason. So number one, you got to catch that. And this also Luke is just describing what happened. It doesn't mean that this has to happen. This doesn't mean this has to happen all the time. It's just describing what happens. But did you catch that, all of that, also that other phrase? They were devout Jews, and it also said something. They were like, what does this mean? What does this mean? See, these devout Jews, these guys don't play. Devout Jews, if they're making this trek, first off, to make a trip, back in the day, it was expensive. It was not cheap to do this trip. So these guys, they're for real, okay? They're the real ones. And they know the scriptures. They know the Old Testament. They know the history. And they've also known that every time, because God would do something in the Old Testament, and he would do these prophecies, and he would say, listen, if you as a people are in rebellion towards me, then this is a judgment sign that you guys have messed up and you guys have left my covering, is when you hear foreign languages in your mix, because there's going to be an invasion. And so you would see this in Israel's history, where a new nation speaking a language that they did not understand would pop up. And they start using it, and that was a present sign of judgment, meaning an invasion is taking place, and this is judgment on your hard hearts and rejection of God. So some of these devout Jews, they've heard the stories. They know that, wait a minute, every time this is happening, that's a sign of judgment. That means an invasion is about to happen, but it's not just one language, it's what is going on? Like, are all of the nations around the world about to gather upon and take us out? So some knew the stories. They were very confused. And they weren't wrong. Because Paul later in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, he talks about this phenomenon of someone talking in a language that they don't understand. And he says, remember, that's a judgment sign. When that happens, it's meant to be a judgment sign to unbelievers. It's for them to show. So there's this stigma to that. There's a stigma to the judgment sign. They don't know what's happening. They don't know what's saying. And so the other thing that was very confusing as well was, what were they saying? Did you guys catch it? All of these 120, what were they speaking in these languages? But the wonders of God. They were talking about who God is, what he has done. They're declaring these amazing, if you've ever read the Psalms and all of these Old Testament texts, when they declare the glories of God and who he is, and that's what they're saying. These guys are just spitting out these things. And here's what's confusing about these people. The only language that anybody has ever heard of people declaring the glories of God was Hebrew, because that's how it was supposed to be. Hebrew was the only language. It was considered God's language. And so these people who would gather together, and they grew up doing this, they only heard the glories of God in what language? Hebrew, and nothing else. So here they are for the first time hearing the glories of God mentioned and used in different dialects, in different languages. You know what? Before that was blasphemy. That was like, you don't do that. But see, that was also, not only was these foreign languages a judgment sign, but it was also a welcome mat. It was God showing that, again, I said a minute ago, the door to the family of God is now open. You don't just have to be a Jew to be saved. You don't have to have that DNA to be saved. Now it is open to all, no matter color, race, creed, all of that. The people of God has now been open to everybody. So it was this really interesting judgment sign, but at the same time, a positive sign to those people. And so it was really, really cool. And all of this is happening because now the people of God is now global.